My parents want me to get rid of the dog I rescued 3 years ago just so they can get their own. I found him wedged under a grocery cart someone had shoved into the rack, crooked, his tan fur plastered dark with rain. One back paw was twisted through a plastic six-pack ring, the kind that's supposed to be cut up before you throw it away. He was pulling against it, yelping every time it dug deeper, and his whole body was shaking so hard I thought he might be seizing. Hey, it's okay. My hands were already on the cart, shoving it back, and he flinched so violently I thought he'd bolt, but he couldn't. The ring had him pinned. I dropped to my knees in a puddle that soaked through my jeans immediately and reached for his paw. He tried to bite me, missed by an inch, teeth snapping on air, and I didn't blame him. I'd bite too. I know, I'm sorry, just hold still. The plastic was cutting into his pad, red and raw where he'd been fighting it. I worked my fingers under the loop, stretching it as wide as I could, and he whimpered so loud a woman passing with an umbrella glanced over, then kept walking. The ring finally popped free, and he scrambled backward, limping, still crying, eyes locked on me like I might be the next thing that hurt him. I pulled my hoodie over my head, rain soaking my shirt instantly, and held it out low to the ground. Come here, please. He didn't move, just stood there shaking, one paw held off the concrete, staring at me with this look that made my chest hurt, like he wanted to trust me and didn't know how. I stayed still, didn't reach for him, just kept the hoodie open and waited while the rain pounded down, and my groceries floated somewhere behind me in a puddle I wasn't going back for. Finally, he took one step, then another. Then he was pressed against my stomach, shaking harder than ever, and I wrapped the hoodie around him and stood up fast before he could change his mind. He cried the whole drive home, this soft, continuous whine that didn't stop even when I whispered to him that he was safe now, that no one was going to leave him under a cart in a storm again. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my shirt was soaked through from rain and puppy, and I didn't care. My parents were less enthusiastic. Absolutely not. Just until he's healthy, I said, already halfway to the bathroom with him still bundled in my hoodie. Then I'll take him to a shelter, I promise. My mother's voice followed me down the hall. You have 3 days. I ran a shallow bath, warm but not hot, and he didn't fight me when I set him in, just stood there, legs shaking, while I rinsed mud and blood off his paw and checked him for injuries I didn't know how to identify. He had no collar, no chip that I could feel, nothing that said anyone had ever wanted him before. That night he fell asleep on my chest, still damp, one paw stretched out like he was making sure I was still there. His breathing evened out and the shaking finally stopped, and I stayed perfectly still even though my arm went numb because I didn't want him to wake up and think he'd been left again. For the first time in years, someone needed me, and I wasn't letting that go. 3 days turned into a week while his paw healed. The week turned into a month because he still limped sometimes, and my mother said shelters wouldn't take a dog that wasn't fully recovered. The month turned into a year because by then, nobody was pretending anymore. I named him Scout, not after anything specific, just because it fit the way he'd investigate every corner of the house like he was on a mission. He grew fast, gangly puppy legs stretching into something solid and strong, tan fur thickening into a coat that shed everywhere no matter how much I brushed him. By 6 months, he'd outgrown every bed I bought. By a year, he was 70 pounds of muscle and energy that knocked over the kitchen trash at least once a week. My parents complained, constantly, about the hair on the couch, the muddy prints across the kitchen floor, the way he barked at the mail carrier like she was personally offending him every single day at 2:30. My father threatened to rehome him at least once a month, usually right after Scout knocked over a lamp or chewed through another pair of shoes. But I also saw my mother sneak him scraps under the table when she thought I wasn't looking. Watched my father scratch behind Scout's ears while he read the paper, muttering about shedding while Scout leaned into his hand like he'd found the best spot in the world. They didn't love him the way I did, but they didn't hate him either. Scout slept beside my bed every night, his breathing steady and even, one paw stretched out to rest against the mattress like he needed to make sure I was still there. On bad days when school felt impossible and everything in my head got too loud, he'd press his whole body against my legs and refuse to move until I sat down. He didn't care if I was failing chemistry or if nobody talked to me at lunch or if my parents were fighting in the kitchen again. He just stayed. We ran together every morning before school, his paws hitting the pavement in rhythm with my steps, tongue hanging out, tail up, completely unaware that he'd saved me as much as I'd saved him. He'd wait by the door every afternoon at 3:15, ears up the second he heard my backpack hit the floor, and the way he'd slam into me like I'd been gone for years instead of hours made everything else feel smaller. He wasn't perfect. He once ate an entire loaf of bread off the counter, plastic bag and all, and threw it up on my father's work shoes. He barked at the neighbor's cat through the fence until she threatened to call animal control. He chewed through my headphones, my favorite jacket, and the corner of my history textbook the week before finals. But he was mine. Fully, completely, undeniably mine in a way nothing else had ever been. By the 3rd year, I couldn't remember what the house sounded like without him. The jingle of his collar when he shook himself awake in the morning. The scrape of his nails on the floor when he followed me from room to room. The way he sighed when he finally settled down for the night. This deep, contented sound that meant he was exactly where he wanted to be. My parents still complained, but less. And sometimes when Scout curled up between them on the couch during a movie, I'd catch my mother's hand resting on his head, fingers moving through his fur without thinking. My father stopped threatening to rehome him, started calling him the dog instead of that thing. It wasn't the same as how I felt, but it was enough. Scout turned 3 on a Tuesday in October. I didn't know his real birthday, so I'd picked the day I found him, storm and all. I bought him a new collar collar, bright red with a tag that said his name and my number, and he wore it like he understood it meant something. We ran an extra mile that morning. He stole half my sandwich at lunch. We fell asleep that night the same way we had 1,000 nights before, his paw stretched out, my hand resting on his side, his heartbeat steady under my palm. I didn't know it then, but that was the last normal day we'd ever have. The next afternoon I came home to silence. Not the usual silence of an empty house. Something heavier. Wrong. Scout always met me at the door. Always. Even if he'd been dead asleep 2 seconds before. The jingle of his collar, the slam of his body against my legs, the way he'd whine until I crouched down to let him lick my face. It was routine. Predictable. The only predictable thing I had. I dropped my backpack in the entryway and called his name. Nothing. I checked the living room, the kitchen, my bedroom. His food bowl was gone. So was his water dish. The leash that hung by the door. Gone. Even the blanket he slept on, the one that smelled like him no matter how many times I washed it, wasn't in its spot by the couch. My mother was in the kitchen chopping vegetables like it was just another Wednesday. "Where's Scout?" She didn't look up. "We found him a better home." The words didn't land right. I heard them, but they didn't make sense, like she'd said them in another language. "What?" "A family with a yard. Kids. He'll be happier there." My father walked in from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag, and he smiled at me. Actually smiled, like he'd just done me some kind of favor. "You've got school to focus on. College applications coming up. A dog's a lot of responsibility." I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My legs felt welded to the floor, and my brain was trying to catch up, trying to process the fact that they were talking about Scout like he was a borrowed library book they'd finally returned. "Where is he?" "It's already done," my mother said, still chopping, still not looking at me. "They picked him up this morning. Lovely people. He'll be fine." "Where is he?" My father's smile faded. "Watch your tone." I didn't watch anything. I was already moving, grabbing my phone, my keys, my jacket. They were still talking, but I couldn't hear them anymore. The only thing I could hear was the sound of Scout's collar jingling when he ran, the way he'd whine when I came home, the weight of his paw on my arm when he fell asleep. He was mine, and I was getting him back. I spent the first hour calling every shelter within 20 miles. Most of them closed at 5. The ones still open told me the same thing. No tan mixed breed had been dropped off that day. No 70-pound dog matching his description. Sorry, try back tomorrow. Tomorrow felt impossible. I sat in my car outside the house because going back inside meant seeing their faces, hearing them explain again why this was somehow good for me. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother asking where I'd gone, reminding me dinner was at 6, like Scout being erased from existence was just a minor scheduling inconvenience. I didn't answer. By the time I came back inside, it was past 8. My father was watching television. My mother was loading the dishwasher. Everything looked exactly the same except for the empty space by the couch where Scout's blanket used to be, the missing bowls in the corner of the kitchen, the hook by the door that no longer held his leash. "You can't just give away my dog." My mother closed the dishwasher and turned around, her expression calm in a way that made my chest hurt. "He wasn't really yours. We paid for his food, his vet bills, everything. You're 17. You don't own anything. I found him. I took care of him. And now someone else will. Someone with space and time and the ability to actually provide what he needs." My father didn't look away from the television. "This isn't a debate. It's done." I wanted to scream, wanted to flip the kitchen table, break something, make them feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. But I just stood there, shaking, because I knew it wouldn't matter. Nothing I said would change their minds. They'd already decided, already handed him off like he was an old couch they didn't want anymore. I went to my room and slammed the door hard enough that a picture fell off the wall. The next morning I skipped school and hit every shelter in the county, walked through rows of kennels, scanned every face, every wagging tail, every dog that jumped at the chain link hoping I was there for them. None of them were Scout. The staff were kind but useless. They suggested posting on lost pet boards, checking with local rescues, filing a report in case he turned up. I did all of it. Printed flyers with his picture, the one where he was mid-sprint at the park, ears flying, mouth open in what looked exactly like a grin. I posted them at coffee shops and grocery stores and vet clinics, my hands shaking every time I taped one up because it felt like admitting he was really gone. My parents didn't ask where I'd been, didn't mention the flyers I'd left on the kitchen counter, or the fact that I wasn't eating. They moved through the house like nothing had changed, like the past 3 years hadn't happened, like Scout had been some temporary inconvenience they'd finally handled. 2 days after he disappeared, I came home to find they'd rearranged the living room. The couch was against a different wall. The chair Scout used to sleep under was gone entirely, replaced with a small bookshelf my mother said she'd been meaning to put up for months. She smiled while she said it, arranging picture frames like she was decorating a model home. "Doesn't it feel more open?" I didn't answer. I went to my room and called every shelter again. Same results. No tan mixed breed, no 70-pound dog, nothing. The third day, I walked into the kitchen and stopped. There was a baby gate blocking the hallway, the kind people used for toddlers, white plastic bars stretching across the doorway like a miniature fence. My mother was making coffee. "We're sectioning off the back of the house, easier to keep clean." "Why?" "Because it makes sense. The carpet back there is new. It wasn't new. We'd had that carpet for 5 years. But I didn't argue. I just stepped over the gate and kept walking, my throat tight, my hands curled into fists because I didn't trust myself to say anything that wouldn't make this worse. That night at dinner, my father brought up college applications, asked if I'd finished my essays, reminded me deadlines were coming up, said this was the time to focus on my future instead of distractions. He didn't say Scout's name. Didn't have to. The word distractions hung in the air like a slap. "Big dogs don't really belong inside anyway," my mother added, passing the salad. "They need space, yards, words. We did him a favor. I stared at my plate and didn't eat. The next morning, my mother was scrolling through her phone at breakfast, smiling at something on the screen. She turned it toward me without asking if I wanted to see. "Isn't this precious?" It was a photo of a living room. White couch, spotless floors, a tiny dog curled up on a pristine cushion. Some kind of purebred thing, maybe 8 pounds, with a bow in its fur. "My coworker just got her, a Maltese. Doesn't shed at all." I pushed my chair back and left the table. She called after me, voice light, like she genuinely didn't understand why I wasn't charmed by her coworker's overpriced accessory dog. "I'm just saying, there are easier pets." I locked myself in the bathroom and called another shelter, then another. Left my number with 3 different rescues, described Scout so many times the words started to blur together. Tan, 70 pounds, mixed breed, brown eyes, red collar. Every person I talked to said the same thing. They'd keep an eye out. They'd call if anything came in. They were sorry. Sorry didn't bring him back. By the end of the week, the house felt like a museum. My parents had rearranged 2 more rooms, bought new throw pillows for the couch, replaced the doormat with one that said, "Welcome" in cursive letters. Everything was clean, organized, perfect, and I hated all of it. I kept calling shelters, kept checking lost pet boards, drove past parks we used to run through, scanned every yard for a flash of tan fur, every dog walker for a familiar gait. Nothing. It was like he'd vanished. My mother mentioned her coworker again on Saturday morning. Offhanded, casual, while she folded laundry in the living room. "Rachel's looking for a family dog. Something good with kids." I told her I'd keep an ear out. I looked up from my phone. "What?" "Just if I hear of anything. She wants something sturdy, friendly." She wasn't looking at me, just folding towels, stacking them neatly, like this was normal conversation. "You're talking about getting another dog. Not for us, for her. Scout's been gone a week, and Rachel's been looking for months. I'm just saying if I hear of something..." "Stop." She finally looked up, eyebrows raised, confused. "Stop what?" "Talking about dogs like they're interchangeable, like Scout didn't matter." "Of course he mattered, but he's with a good family now. You need to move on." I laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound came out sharp and bitter, and my mother's face shifted just slightly, like I'd done something rude. "This isn't funny." "You're right, it's not." I walked out before she could say anything else. Got in my car and drove to the shelter I'd already visited 4 times because I didn't know what else to do. The same volunteer recognized me, gave me a sympathetic smile, told me nothing had come in. I sat in the parking lot afterward and stared at Scout's picture on my phone, the one from the park. His ears up, eyes bright, completely unaware that 3 years later my parents would decide he wasn't worth keeping. My phone buzzed. Another text from my mother asking when I'd be home, reminding me we had family dinner plans, saying I was being dramatic. I didn't answer. I just started calling shelters again, one by one, because it was the only thing I knew how to do. The volunteer at the 5th shelter I called that week didn't sound sympathetic anymore. She sounded tired. "We have your number. We have your description. If a dog matching that comes in, we'll call you. Can I just come by and check? We're closing in 10 minutes. Please, I'll be fast." She sighed. "Fine, but I'm telling you now, nothing's come in since yesterday." I made it there in 8 minutes. Walked every kennel anyway. Checked twice. Left feeling hollower than when I'd arrived. My mother was in the kitchen when I got home, wiping down counters that were already clean. She glanced up when I walked in, her expression careful. "Still nothing?" "No. Maybe it's time to accept that he's settled somewhere. Happy." I opened the fridge, stared at nothing, closed it again. "You don't know that. I know you can't keep doing this to yourself." "Doing what? Trying to find my dog?" "Obsessing. You've missed school twice this week. Your teachers are emailing. This isn't healthy." I turned around. "You gave him away. We found him a home. There's a difference." "Where?" She blinked. "What? Where did you take him? What's the address? Who are these people?" Her jaw tightened. "I'm not discussing this again." "Because you don't have an answer. Because it's none of your business. The decision was made. You need to move forward." I left the kitchen before I said something I couldn't take back. Went to my room and pulled up every animal rescue within 50 miles, messaging each one with Scout's photo and description. Most didn't respond. The ones that did said they'd keep an eye out, same as everyone else. That night, I barely slept. Kept checking my phone, refreshing lost pet pages, scrolling through adoption listings in case someone had already put him up. Nothing. Just rows of faces that weren't his, dogs waiting for families that might never come. At school the next day, my guidance counselor called me into her office. She sat across from me with her hands folded, her voice gentle in that practiced way adults use when they think you're fragile. "Your teachers are concerned. You've been distracted, missing assignments. Is everything okay at home?" "Fine. Your mother mentioned you've been upset about a pet." Of course she had. Of course she'd made it sound like I was overreacting to something small, something fixable, instead of the fact that she'd stolen the only thing that mattered. "I'm looking for my dog." "I understand that's hard. Losing a pet is never easy." "I didn't lose him. My parents gave him away without telling me." Her expression shifted slightly, sympathetic, but cautious. "That must feel really difficult. But sometimes parents make decisions they believe are best, even when it's painful. They don't get to decide what's best for him. They didn't even ask me. I know this feels unfair, but part of growing up is learning that we don't always have control over everything we care about." I stared at her, wondered if she'd rehearsed that line, if she genuinely believed it, if she had any idea how useless it sounded. "Can I go?" She hesitated, then nodded. "If you need someone to talk to, my door is always open." I didn't go back to class. I left campus and drove to another shelter, this one 40 minutes away, because I'd read online that sometimes dogs got transferred between facilities. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I described Scout, just shook her head and went back to her paperwork. By the time I got home, my father was waiting in the driveway, arms crossed, expression flat. "You skipped school." "I was looking for Scout." "You were wasting time. Get inside." I followed him into the house. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table, her phone face down in front of her, her mouth pressed into a thin line. "We've been patient," my father said. "We've let you have your tantrum, but this ends now." "Tantrum?" "Yes, tantrum. You're 17 years old acting like a child because you didn't get your way. You gave away my dog. We rehomed an animal we could no longer care for. That's not the same thing. You could care for him. You just didn't want to." My mother leaned forward. "We wanted you to focus on your future. College applications, scholarships, real opportunities, not spending every free moment chasing after a dog who's already moved on. He didn't move on. You moved him, and he's fine. Better than fine. He's with people who actually have time for him." "Then tell me where." Silence. My father's jaw tightened. "That's not your concern. He's my dog." "He was never your dog. We paid for him, we housed him. You were responsible for walking him and feeding him, that's it. Legally, he was ours to do with as we saw fit. You're grounded," my father continued. "No car, no phone after 8. You'll go to school, come home, and focus on what actually matters. This matters." "No, it doesn't. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner we can all move on." I didn't argue, didn't yell, just turned and walked to my room, closed the door, and sat on the floor with my back against it because I didn't trust myself to do anything else. My phone buzzed. A message from a girl in my English class, asking if I was okay, saying I'd seemed off lately. I didn't respond. Didn't know how to explain that everything felt wrong, that the house was too quiet, that I kept expecting to hear Scout's nails on the hardwood or feel him nudge my hand when I sat too still. I opened my laptop and kept searching. Checked adoption sites, rescue pages, lost and found boards, posted Scout's picture in 3 more groups, described him again, left my number even though my parents said I couldn't use my phone. Someone messaged me an hour later, said they'd seen a dog that looked like Scout near a park 2 towns over. I asked for details. They sent a blurry photo, wrong coloring, wrong build. I thanked them anyway and kept looking. At dinner that night, my parents acted like nothing had happened. My mother asked about my history project. My father mentioned a work trip coming up. They passed dishes and made small talk, and I sat there feeling like I was watching strangers pretend to be a family. "You're not eating," my mother said. "Not hungry. You need to eat." I picked up my fork, moved food around my plate, put the fork back down. My father exhaled slowly. "This attitude isn't helping anyone." "I'm not trying to help. I'm trying to find Scout." "He's gone. Accept it." "Where did you take him?" My mother set her glass down harder than necessary. "We're not doing this again." "Then just tell me, one address, one name. That's all I'm asking." "And then what? You'll show up and demand him back? Make a scene? Upset a family that's already taken him in?" "I just want to know he's okay." "He's fine. Better than fine. Now drop it." I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. My mother started to say something, but I was already walking away, back to my room, door closed, laptop open, searching again because it was the only thing that made sense. By midnight, I'd messaged 12 more rescues, posted in 6 new groups, called 2 24-hour vet clinics in case someone had brought in a stray. Nothing. No matches. No sightings. Just the same empty responses, the same polite apologies, the same growing certainty that Scout was somewhere I couldn't reach. I fell asleep with my phone in my hand, Scout's picture still on the screen, and woke up 3 hours later to my mother knocking on my door, telling me I'd be late for school if I didn't get up now. I went through the motions, sat through classes without hearing a word, ate lunch alone because I didn't want to explain to anyone why I looked like I hadn't slept in days, drove home in silence, parked in the driveway, and stared at the house that used to feel like something and now just felt like a place I had to survive until I could leave. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Is this about the tan dog? The big one?" My hands shook as I typed back. "Yes, do you know where he is?" The reply came fast. "Maybe. Can you meet tomorrow? I volunteer at a shelter across town. Saw your post. Think I might have seen him." I messaged back immediately, asking which shelter, what time, anything else they could tell me. The response took 20 minutes that felt like hours. "Northside Animal Care. I'm there tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock. Bring the photo." I didn't sleep that night. Kept my phone plugged in beside my pillow, checking every few minutes to make sure the message was real, that I hadn't imagined it. At some point, my mother knocked and asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. She lingered in the doorway like she wanted to say more, then left without another word. The next morning, I told my parents I had a group project after school. My father barely looked up from his coffee. My mother nodded and reminded me I needed to be home by 6. I agreed, knowing I wouldn't be. School dragged. Every class felt twice as long, every minute another barrier between me and 2 o'clock. I left campus early, didn't bother signing out, just walked straight to my car and drove. Northside Animal Care sat at the edge of an industrial area, tucked between a storage facility and a vacant lot. The building looked older than the others I'd visited, the paint faded, the sign missing a few letters. I parked and checked my phone. 1:58. Inside, the smell hit me first. Bleach and wet fur and something faintly sour. A woman stood behind the front desk, mid-40s, hair pulled back, wearing a shirt with the shelter's logo half peeled off. "Help you? I'm looking for someone. They messaged me yesterday about a dog." She glanced at a clipboard. "Name?" "Mine or theirs?" "Yours," I told her. She scanned the list, then shook her head. "Don't see you down here. They said 2 o'clock. They volunteer here. We've got 3 volunteers today. None of them mentioned meeting anyone." My chest tightened. "Can you check? Please. It's about my dog. He's been missing for over a week." She sighed, picked up a phone, pressed a few buttons, spoke quietly to someone on the other end, hung up. "Jenna's coming up. She's the only one who works intake. If anyone saw your dog, it'd be her." I waited by the desk, hands shaking, trying not to think about what it would mean if this led nowhere. The door behind the desk opened, and a younger woman stepped through, maybe mid-20s, wearing gloves and an apron streaked with mud. You're the one asking about the tan dog? Yes, you messaged me. She pulled off her gloves. Let me see the photo. I handed her my phone. She studied it, zoomed in, handed it back. Yeah, I think he came through here. Everything in me went still. When? Few days ago. Big guy, right? Tan coat, dark muzzle, maybe 70 pounds? That's him. Where is he? Her expression shifted. He didn't stay long. Someone came and got him the same day. Who? I don't know. I wasn't working the desk when they picked him up, but I remember him because he wouldn't stop crying. Kept pacing his kennel, wouldn't eat. We figured he was stressed from being dropped off. Dropped off by who? Older couple. Didn't get their names. They said he was too much for them to handle, that they needed to rehome him fast. The floor felt unsteady. What did they look like? She shrugged. I don't really remember. I see a lot of people, but the dog, yeah, I remember him. He was sweet, just scared. And someone adopted him the same day? Not adopted. Reclaimed. Someone came in saying he was theirs, that he'd gotten loose. Had a photo on their phone, matched the dog. We let them take him. Did you get a name and address, anything? Front desk would have logged it. Let me check. She disappeared through the door. I stood there, pulse hammering, trying to process what she'd said. Someone had reclaimed him. Someone with a photo. My parents wouldn't have done that. They wanted him gone. So who? Jenna came back holding a paper. Here. Says the dog was reclaimed by a woman named Diane Pruitt. Left a phone number. Can I have it? She hesitated. I'm not really supposed to give out personal information. Please, that's my dog. My parents gave him away without telling me. I've been looking for him for over a week. I just need to know where he is. She looked at me for a long moment, then scribbled the number on a sticky note and handed it over. Good luck. I was back in my car before I even processed leaving the building. Pulled up my phone, dialed the number. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. Generic greeting, no name. I hung up and tried again. Same result. I sat there staring at the number, trying to figure out what to do next. Searched the name online. Found 3 Diane Pruitts in the area. No way to know which one. No addresses listed. My phone buzzed. My mother, asking where I was. I didn't respond. Started the car and drove home because I didn't know where else to go. Because I needed to think. Because I was so close. And it still wasn't enough. My parents were both in the living room when I walked in. My father looked up from his laptop. My mother set down her book. You're late. I was looking for Scout. We told you to stop. And I told you I won't. My father closed his laptop. Sit down. I don't want to sit. Sit down. I stayed standing. My mother stood up, crossed her arms, her voice measured and cold. This has gone on long enough. You're making yourself sick. You're failing classes. You're lying to us about where you are. This needs to end. Then tell me where he is. We've already told you he's in a good home. What home? Give me a name, an address, anything. My father stood now too. You're not listening. We made a decision for this family. That decision is final. You don't get to undo it because you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm trying to find my dog. He's not your dog. You keep saying that, but you're wrong. He was mine. You gave him to me. You said I could keep him, and then you took him and lied about it. My mother's jaw tightened. We didn't lie. We found him a better situation. A family that could actually care for him properly. I cared for him. I was the only one who did. You were a child playing house. We were the ones paying for food, for vet bills, for everything else. And when it became clear you couldn't manage both him and your responsibilities, we made the choice you refused to make. I never refused anything. You never asked. Because we didn't need to ask. We're your parents. We know what's best. You don't know anything. My father stepped closer. Watch your tone. Or what? You'll take something else? There's nothing left. Silence dropped between us, heavy and sharp. My mother looked at my father, something passing between them I couldn't read. We gave him to someone we trust, she finally said. Someone who understands dogs like him. Someone who has the time and space and resources to give him the life he deserves. That's not your concern. It is my concern. He's mine. He was never yours, not legally, not in any way that matters. Then why won't you tell me where he is? My father exhaled slowly. Because you'll do exactly what you're doing now. You'll show up. You'll make a scene. You'll disrupt a situation that's already settled. I just want to see him. No, you want to take him back and that's not happening. Something cracked open inside me. Not anger, not sadness. Something colder and sharper and more certain than anything I'd felt in days. I went to a shelter today, Northside Animal Care. A volunteer there remembered him. Said an older couple dropped him off. Said someone came the same day and took him home. My mother's face didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. That has nothing to do with us. The person who took him had a photo. Knew exactly who he was. Her name was Diane Pruitt. My father's expression hardened. My mother looked away. That's your sister, I said, staring at my mother. Isn't it? She didn't answer. You gave him to your sister. You told me you found him a better home, but you just handed him off to family so you wouldn't have to deal with him anymore. It's not that simple. Then explain it. Diane has land. She has other dogs. She's experienced. It made sense. It made sense for you. Not for him. Not for me. My father stepped forward. This conversation is over. No, it's not. Yes, it is. You're grounded. Indefinitely. No car, no phone, no leaving this house except for school. And if you try to contact Diane, if you try to go there, we will take further steps. What steps? Whatever steps we need to take to make sure you understand that this is finished. They weren't going to help me. They were never going to help me. I turned and walked toward my room. My mother called after me saying we needed to finish this discussion. I didn't stop. Closed my door, locked it, sat on my bed with my phone, and pulled up every search result I could find for Diane Pruitt. Found her address in 15 minutes, 40 miles away, rural route, property records showing 3 acres. I plugged it into my maps, memorized the directions, then deleted the search history. My parents thought this was over. They were wrong. I left before sunrise, didn't pack anything except my wallet and phone, grabbed my keys off the dresser, walked past my parents' bedroom without making a sound, and closed the front door so carefully the latch barely clicked. The drive took 50 minutes. Roads I didn't know, towns I'd never heard of, fields stretching flat and dark under a sky just starting to pale. I followed the directions I'd memorized, turned onto a gravel road marked only by a rusted mailbox, and kept going until I saw the house. Single story, white paint peeling, a wraparound porch cluttered with planters and a broken rocking chair, 3 cars in the driveway, 1 on blocks. A chain-link fence ran along the side yard, tall enough that I couldn't see over it. I parked at the end of the driveway and got out. The air smelled like wet grass and something faintly animal. I walked toward the fence, listening. Heard barking from somewhere behind the house, sharp and rhythmic, the kind that doesn't stop. Then another sound underneath it, lower, familiar. I moved closer. The barking got louder. I reached the gate and looked through. 4 dogs in a yard, 2 smaller ones near the porch, 1 sprawled in the dirt by a water dish, and 1 standing near the far corner, head low, tail tucked. Tan coat, dark muzzle, 70 pounds. My legs almost gave out. Scout. His head snapped up. He stared at me for half a second, then bolted toward the fence so fast he skidded in the mud. Started crying immediately. That same high whine he used to make when I came home from school, paws up on the chain link, trying to reach me through the gaps. I dropped to my knees and pressed my hands through the fence. He licked my fingers, my wrists, shaking so hard I thought he'd hurt himself. I was crying and didn't care. Didn't even feel it until my face was wet and my voice cracked trying to say his name again. The back door opened. A woman stepped out, older, maybe 50, wearing a flannel shirt and boots. She stopped when she saw me. "Can I help you?" I stood up, wiping my face with my sleeve. "I'm here for my dog." She looked at Scout, then back at me. "That's not your dog." "Yes, he is. His name is Scout. I've had him for 6 years. My parents gave him away without telling me." "Your parents?" "My mother, your sister." Her expression shifted. She stepped off the porch, walked closer. "You're Claire's kid, and that's my dog." She crossed her arms. "Your mother told me he needed a new home. Said you couldn't take care of him anymore." She lied. "She said you were overwhelmed, that it wasn't fair to him. She didn't ask me, she just took him." Diane glanced at Scout, who was still pressed against the fence, whining. "He's been rough since he got here. Won't eat much. Keeps trying to get out. I figured he just needed time to adjust." "He doesn't need time. He needs to come home. I don't know if I can just hand him over. Your mother brought him here for a reason. The reason is she wanted him gone. She didn't care where he went as long as he wasn't in her house. But he's mine. I found him. I raised him. And I'm not leaving without him." She studied me for a long moment. Scout kept crying, pawing at the fence, looking between us like he was trying to understand why no one was opening the gate. "If I give him back and your parents show up here looking for him, that's on me." "They won't. They don't care enough to come looking." "You sure about that?" "I'm sure." She sighed, pulled a key ring from her pocket, and unlocked the gate. Scout shot through the opening before it was halfway open, nearly knocked me over, jumping and whining and licking my face. I sat down hard in the gravel, and he climbed into my lap like he was still 10 pounds, pressing his head under my chin, shaking. I held him and didn't let go. Diane stood a few feet away, watching. "You got a plan for what happens next?" "I'm taking him home. And when your parents see him?" "I don't care. You're going to care when they call the cops." "Then I'll deal with it." She shook her head. "You're 17, right?" 18 in 4 months. 4 months is a long time when you're living under someone else's roof. "I know. You got anywhere else you can go?" I didn't answer. Scout pressed harder against me, his breathing starting to even out. Diane crouched down, rested her hands on her knees. "Look, I didn't know the whole story when your mother brought him here. She made it sound like you'd agreed, like this was a mutual thing. If I'd known she just took him, I wouldn't have said yes. So you'll let me take him. I already let you take him. He's sitting in your lap, but you need to think about what comes after. You walk back into that house with him, your parents are going to lose it. And if they're the type to give away a dog without asking, they're the type to make your life hell until you give him up again. I won't give him up. Everyone says that until it gets hard. It's already hard." She stood, brushed the dirt off her jeans. "There's a motel about 10 miles from here, allows pets. If you need a night to figure things out, that's an option." "I don't have money for a motel." "You got a bank account?" "Yeah." "Then you've got money. Might not be much, but it's something." Scout shifted in my arms, looked up at me, then back at Diane like he was trying to figure out if she was safe. I scratched behind his ears and he leaned into it, eyes half closed. Diane walked back toward the house, stopped at the porch. "I'll get his stuff. Food, bowl, leash. Give me a minute." She disappeared inside. I sat there with Scout, feeling the weight of him, the warmth, the way his breathing matched mine. He looked thinner than I remembered, coat duller, but his eyes were the same. And when I said his name, he perked up like nothing else in the world mattered. Diane came back with a bag of food and a leash. Set them down beside me. "That should last you a week or so. After that, you're on your own." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just take care of him." I clipped the leash onto Scout's collar and stood up. He stayed close, leaning against my leg, glancing up every few seconds like he needed to make sure I was still there. We walked to the car and I opened the back door. He jumped in without hesitation, circled twice, then lay down on the seat. I got in the driver's side and just sat there for a minute, hands on the wheel trying to figure out what to do next. My phone buzzed. My mother asking where I was. I turned the phone off and tossed it in the passenger seat. The motel Diane mentioned wasn't hard to find. Single story, peeling paint, a sign out front advertising weekly rates. I parked in front of the office and went inside. The man behind the desk barely looked up. "Need a room? One night. Do you allow dogs? 50 deposit, non-refundable." I pulled out my debit card. He ran it, handed me a key attached to a plastic tag with a room number on it. "Ground floor, end of the row. Checkouts at 11. The room smelled like cigarettes and bleach. One bed, a chair with a stain on the armrest, a TV bolted to the dresser, closer. I didn't care. Scout sniffed every corner, then jumped onto the bed and lay down in the center, watching me. I sat beside him, and he rested his head on my leg. I ran my hand along his back, felt his ribs more pronounced than they should have been, saw the way his eyes stayed fixed on me like he was afraid I'd disappear if he looked away. "I'm not leaving," I said. "Not again." He sighed, long and heavy, and closed his eyes. I didn't sleep much, kept checking my phone even though I'd turned it off, kept thinking about what would happen when I went home, if I went home. Around 3 in the morning, I turned the phone back on. 23 missed calls, 15 texts, all from my parents. I didn't read them, turned it off again. By the time the sun came up, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going back. Not to that house, not to those people who thought they could take whatever they wanted and call it love. I had a car, I had some money, I had Scout. That was enough. I checked out at 10, drove to a gas station, filled the tank, bought a bag of ice and a cheap cooler, stopped at a grocery store and picked up bread, peanut butter, a gallon of water, some canned soup, enough to last a few days if I was careful. Scout sat in the back seat the whole time, head on his paws, watching me through the rear window every time I walked back to the car. I drove east, no destination in mind, just away. Passed through towns I didn't recognize, took back roads when the highway felt too open. Around noon, I pulled into a rest area, parked under a tree, and let Scout out. He stayed close, sniffing the grass, looking back at me every few steps. We sat on a bench, and I gave him half a sandwich. He ate it in 2 bites, then rested his head on my knee. I scratched behind his ears and stared out at the highway, cars passing in both directions, everyone going somewhere that wasn't here. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out, saw my mother's name, almost turned it off, then stopped, opened the message. "We need to talk, come home." I stared at it for a long time, then typed back. No. Her response came fast. "This is ridiculous. You're making everything worse. You made it worse. You took him. You lied. I'm done. Where are you?" I didn't answer. Put the phone back in my pocket. Scout looked up at me, tail wagging slow. "We're okay," I told him. "We're going to be okay." I didn't know if that was true. Didn't know where we'd sleep tomorrow or the day after. Didn't know how long the money would last or what I'd do when it ran out. But sitting there with him, the sun warm on my face, his weight solid and real against my leg, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. I felt like I'd won. We stopped for gas just after dark. I filled the tank while Scout watched from the back seat, nose pressed to the window, breath fogging the glass. When I got back in, he shifted closer, rested his paw on my shoulder like he used to when he was small enough to fit in my lap. I started driving again. No map, no plan, just east on roads that emptied the farther we went. The radio played static between stations, and I didn't bother fixing it. Scout's breathing evened out behind me, deep and steady, the kind of sleep he never got at Diane's place. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Hair a mess, eyes shadowed, face thinner than it had been a week ago. I looked tired. I looked angry, but I didn't look trapped anymore. The light turned green, and I kept driving. Around midnight, I pulled into a rest area, parked under a broken streetlight where the shadows felt safer. Scout stirred when the engine cut off, lifted his head, then settled back down when he saw I wasn't leaving. I climbed into the back seat, and he made room, curling against me like he'd done every night for 6 years. I ran my hand along his side, felt the ridge of his spine, the warmth of him, the realness of him. He sighed and pressed closer. "You're home now," I whispered. His tail thumped once against the seat. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of him, solid and warm and mine. No one waiting at a house I didn't want to go back to. No one deciding what I got to keep. Just us, and the quiet hum of the highway outside, and the kind of stillness that only comes when you finally stopped running toward something and realized you already have it.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.